Today on the Go Ride channel, we're going to try to answer one of the age-old questions. Why would you have one more when you can have one too many? I'm on my 2010 KLR 650, and ironically, we're talking about horsepower, and more specifically, how much is too much? 2018, it's a great world. You can get more computing power in a cell phone than was on the moon lander. And you can also get a Superbike, which has well exceeding, well maybe not well exceeding, but approaching 200 horsepower. So this is the end of the line. Dead end with a shark. That's kind of cool. So you can get a Superbike with, right around 200, maybe a little more than 200 horsepower pretty easily. Talking about you, Ducati Panigale V4, 214 horsepower. Talking about you, Aprilia RSV4, 201 horsepower, Ninja H2 and all street legal trims. Talking about, 200 horsepower. And then the BMW S1000 double R, I think that's an honorable mention. I think they're at 199. To put this in context, that's more horsepower per liter than a Ferrari 488. And that's more horsepower outright than a base model Toyota Camry. And you're on two wheels with with significantly less contact patch. And that's a lot of power for that kind of, as advanced as the chassis are, that's a lot of horsepower. And those of you that have watched these videos, you know that I'm not the best rider in the world, and I certainly wouldn't take my word for it. But Stefan Pierer, who's KTM CEO, I would think that he knows something about it. And in 2015, he gave an interview with Cycle News, and he was saying something to the effect, in regards to the fact that they were not producing a homologation version of the RC16. This gravel's a little gnar. They're not producing a homologation version of it. And he said something to the effect of, when your Superbike is approaching 200 horsepower, it does not belong on the street. Mine's road resident only. That's not me, so I'm going to go ahead and turn around like a good boy. And so he had said that, 200 horsepower in a Superbike does not belong on the street. And I tend to agree with him, but in 2015, he's saying this in the context of, all kinds of rider aids. There's a lot of electronics available on these bikes that make them rideable by mere mortals. I don't think that there's any question that 200 horsepower in a purely analog form is reasonable for 99% of riders on the street. Definitely not on the street. Maybe on the track, one could make a good cohesive argument for it, but we're talking about on the street here. And so 99% of riders, that's probably too much for them. But I don't think it's possible to really have the whole conversation without talking about the electronic rider aids, that are available. These bikes have traction control, stability control, anti-lock brakes. They have electronic quick shifters. I believe you can adjust, in some cases, how much engine braking you get from the bike, which I think is really interesting. All these things helping riders. It doesn't make these bikes crash-proof, but it certainly does make it so that you're not going to whiskey throttle your way to a low side or rolling out a wheelie. And it takes these bikes from being something that's just absolutely, not rideable by mere mortals to something that a decent rider with a decent wallet can tackle. And there's kind of two sides to the same coin that's kind of used by both sides of the argument. These bikes develop the power, right? They only put down as much power as any rider is going to ask of them. It's all based on RPM and throttle position, and so an experienced rider or a competent rider, talented rider, is going to only open the throttle as much as he or she sees fit based on road conditions, lean angle, all kinds of different crap. These bikes don't just take off on their own. But the flip side of that coin is, what's the point of having all that power if you're not going to ever have the opportunity to use it? It's kind of like the same argument my A-cup high school girlfriend made. Anything that doesn't fit in your mouth is just excessive. Lest I digress. But in all seriousness, on a public street, I'm struggling, let's put it this way, I'm struggling to come up with a situation where you're going to be able to tap 214 horsepower. And so what's the point of even having it? And so I think kind of the ultimate answer to this is really just why you decided to throw a leg over a bike in the first place. And if the answer to that question is pure speed, if it's, to beat, $400,000 cars in freeway roll-ons, if it's to brag about how much horsepower your bike has, then 200 plus horsepower is not out of line. But I would make the argument that there are less of those people and more people like me. And I ride because it's fun. I ride because of how it feels. I like being laid over in these corners. I like the places that my bike is able to take me. I like the people that I get to meet along the way. I enjoy gradually practicing and improving my skills. That's one of the reasons why I really like my bikes being completely analog. Because the brake modulation, throttle control, that's all stuff that's 100% on me. I like to feel connected to the bike in that way. And, kind of as a result, horsepower, I would say, is not necessarily a prerequisite to fun. I've had a handful of friends that I can think of that have sold bikes like crossplane R1s and purchased stuff like 600s, or in one case, actually 300. And none of those guys have regretted it. It kind of reminds me of a saying that back when I was a surfer, or when I could surf regularly, that my friends and I would say to one another was, don't fight the fun. And what that meant was, don't worry about paddling out on a small day, because you can still have a really good session. And I think motorcycles are much the same. As with anything, guys, I really do enjoy hearing your comments. Please, if you want, throw me a like, throw me a subscribe. I really appreciate it. And get out there, go have some fun. Go ride.